I'm always very excited to talk about anything where we're talking about both AI and about bias, because my interest in this topic comes from a variety of sources. The white paper actually that Paul was talking about is a white paper about how to include LGBTQ employees in your workforce, how to measure their experiences in such a way that you can help them feel more welcome, be more mobile within your organizations, and also have the opportunity to, be as successful as every other person. I guess I don't really need that microphone. So, my interest in bias comes from a long-standing perspective where, as a teenager and a dancer, I discovered that LGBTQ colleagues of mine, although we didn't call them that at the time, these are 13-year-olds. Kind of uncomfortable in their own skins, not quite sure exactly what to do and how to fit in. That's one of the personal experiences that I have had that have caused me to have this interest. Another one is that I recognize in my own life that there are many times when I have done some things where, from a logical perspective, they really weren't necessarily the best choices that I could have made for myself. But anyway, this is my little friend. I'm going to call this little friend Mind Bug. Mind Bug, okay? We'll talk about Mind Bug again. But I want to talk about a special sort of use case, if you would, regarding AI and bias. Adnan talked about the fact that AI offers us this opportunity to do some things that humans don't do well. We want to let humans do the things that humans do well, and let the AI take care of the things that the AI can take care of. And I do believe as well that all of you are in a profession where you know, and you've heard our first speaker, Marianne, talk about the fact that finding the talent that you need to satisfy your CEO's vision is really, really difficult at this time. So I'm really fascinated by the idea that at the very same time that it's so very difficult to get the talent that organizations need, what we find is that organizations are still making some very common mistakes. Let's call them errors. Let's call them mind bugs as they make their selection decisions. So this particular critter is a friend of mine because I once went into a store. I do that fairly often. When I came out of the store, it might be for a particular thing. When I came out of the store, this is the only thing that I had purchased. Now, this little bug is actually a coin purse, okay? And it turns out that the reason that it caught my attention is because I really like ladybugs. I've liked them since I was a child. And so I went into the store to buy a particular thing, which actually was a wallet. But what I came up with was this coin purse, which I called a mind bug. And I always remember the fact that the reaction is, the reality is that I had some sort of an emotional reaction in the shopping situation that caused me, because I'm a human, to make a very irrational decision, because there's no way that this critter was going to solve the problem I was trying to solve. I was trying to find something to hold my credit cards and my debit cards, and I came out the bug, this little thing that can't possibly do the job. So I've kind of begun to think of this little mind bug as the perfect representation of something that we're going to talk about tonight, which is humans' tendency to make errors in decision making that we are not even conscious of, right? That's what we do. We all think that we know exactly why we did what we did, and that we will do something predictable tomorrow, and that you will do something predictable tomorrow, and we will understand. But that's not how human brains work. I'm an industrial psychologist, that's my training. And I know that unconscious bias really interferes with a lot of our decision making. And it turns out that there might be some opportunity for AI to help with this in the HR context. So I want to ask you a very simple question. These two tables that you see on this little white space, One of them looks more like a ping pong table, let's say, and the other looks more like a dining table where you might have 4 people seated. Do you think that the surface of these tables, are they the same shape? Are these things the same?
No.
Okay, how many people say that these things are not the same? And this number, 80%, means a great deal. Does that number 80%, less than 80%, have any significance to you within a hiring context? So, there have been many legal cases. This is in the United States, I should call. There have been many legal cases brought in the United States regarding the idea that when organizations hire and select and make decisions about promotion and career mobility, they make a lot of errors. These cognitive errors, these unconscious biases that come into play. I once worked in an office. I work in an office all the time, but on this particular occasion in this company, I called I was relatively new, and I called up to another floor, and I spoke to this person who needed to talk to me about the thing, about which I was the expert. And so we had a wonderful conversation, and we agreed that this person would come see me the next day at 10 o'clock in the morning, let's say. I'm sitting in my office, and as I'm working away, sort of in my peripheral vision, I can see someone go by that way, but I'm working away. Well, I might not have been doing this. This was back in the day. Everybody was doing it wrong. And I saw in my peripheral vision someone come back again. Then on the third time, the person came to my office. They kind of knocked on the door jam, and they said, "I'm looking for Dr. Cox. Do you know where I can find her?" And I said, "Are you John Smith? Come on in. I'm Dr. Cox." His reaction was actually very similar to this. It was not possible for him to sort of process that I would be that person. So, yeah, the 80% has to do with the law that says that when it comes to measures of whether a selection process could be considered to be having an adverse impact. The words adverse and impact together, they go together, they have a legal meaning, which basically says that if your hiring or your selection process is having the effect of selecting fewer than 80% of people in certain protected groups in comparison to the highest group that you select. So let's say you're selecting for 100, you're selecting 100 people, and of those people that you select, all of them a majority of them tend to fall into one particular group. Let's say a group that is not in a protected class. So I'm talking about age, people over 40, gender, race, national origin, and so on. If you're not able to show that your selection device, and by the way, I don't just mean an assessment. Anything that you use to make decisions is considered a test for legal reasons, right? And that is including looking at data on LinkedIn and looking at data on Twitter or wherever you get your data from. If you aren't successful in hiring those in the protected class, at least 80% of a rate of those you hire who are not in the protected class, it's very likely that you're having adverse impact. And so what organizations do is they spend a lot of effort thinking about widening the net. How do we get a broader representation of people in the pool? Because maybe if we can select from this broader pool, we won't have adverse impact. Another thing that organizations do, and there was a lot of talk about this last summer in the news, is to really focus on training people to recognize their unconscious biases. I've already told you, about my bias. I've told you about the challenge of our brains in figuring out what's going on with the shape. I've talked about adverse impact and how there are legal requirements. The bottom line is we humans don't do this well. So when admin says, maybe we can use AI to do the things that we don't do well, this might be one of those things, right? Some organizations will even decide we're no longer going to use assessments because assessments get a lot of scrutiny from a legal perspective. So maybe if we don't use them, we can hide and we won't ever be guilty of adverse impact. But I've already told you that from a legal perspective, adverse impact is not just used with regard to formal assessments. It's anything that you're doing and making those decisions theoretically could be considered an assessment for legal purposes. And so I work for IBM, and IBM, there's some of the things that we're doing within our organization, and also with some of our clients. I'm not a technical architect like admin is. I'm an industrial psychologist interested in human behavior. And so what we're doing is we're trying to help you by using AI to overcome these biases that I talked about before. And so what's happening now is that AI is able to help you expand your candidate pool by using some of the tools that admin talked about, including chatbots and other tools, to have you your candidates, interact with your information about your jobs and about your organizations, and have the actual tool help people to understand that they should apply for these jobs. So supporting people, encouraging them to apply by showing them that they could be successful in those jobs. The other thing that AI is doing is really helping to identify for recruiters which of the candidates meet the criteria for success and helping them to be brought up to the surface so they can be visible, where in the past they might have been invisible by virtue of these biases. I'm not talking about the bias of the person, the recruiter, I'm talking about the system. And then, the other thing that AI can do is build a model, and having analyzed all of the historical data to identify if there already exists adverse impact in your selection decisions. In a big company like IBM, with years and years of data, you can see why that might be helpful. The AI can help surface the adverse impact, identify the way to modify the algorithm to accommodate for that, to account for that, to overcome that, and really make it possible for you to be more successful in getting a more diverse group of employees who can be successful in these jobs and overcome the bias that is often present in your historical data. And then you continue to use the model, and the model continues to be retested and gets better with time, and you have fewer mind bugs. Thank you.